welcome to the Thought Brothers. I'm Gary Johnson. We have Dr. Fredrick Clark in the house, Carlos, and Stan Harrison, the insurance man, the money man. Actually, we got two money men here, but we're going to talk about health and wellness. And this is a special episode as we talk about sugar and anything else that Dr. Clark directs us in. This is going to be a powerful show because I don't think we are aware of the hidden dangers of excessive sugar consumption. And sugar's in everything. And it's gotten to the point where when I go grocery shopping, I get ketchup and condiments that don't have added sugar. And sometimes I try to look for the ones that just don't have sugar in them at all. So we're going to talk about diabetes in the Black community, prostate cancer awareness, hypertension, stress-related illnesses that impact Black men. Dr. Clark, I want to turn it over to you. How you doing? And let's kick this thing off any way you want to start it.
I'm doing very well this evening, and I appreciate you having me on this evening. The subject, sugar. Every time I hear someone bring up sugar, I have to begin to have them to break it down a little bit further than just sugar. And one of the things I always throw out before anybody says anything about sugar is starch. Because I think starch is probably the greater danger than sugar. And why do I say that? I say that because all starches break down and become sugar. So we probably consume a lot more starch than we consume sugar. Now, having said that, we look at it from a chemical standpoint, what starch is. Starches are what we call a long chain of glucose. So I always ask people, I said, if you put a piece of bread or pastry in your mouth and you just close your mouth, what happens to it? It literally dissolves in your mouth. And the reason it dissolves in your mouth because there is an enzyme in the saliva called amylase, which breaks down the starch molecule into long chains of glucose, of sugar. So when you consume that, it has a greater effect upon your metabolism and how it is processed much more than sugar alone. Though it doesn't taste sweet, it is one of the primary drivers of high glucose and high blood sugar, as opposed to sugar itself. Most people don't just consume spoons of sugar. I mean, they may eat candy and things like, but even those are going to be limited. Cookies, everything, you're going to limit that. But when it comes to starch itself, those foods that you eat, starchy foods, be it potatoes, rice, corn, these type of things, they're going to raise your blood sugar and will have a more significant impact on your life because you consume those on a much more routine basis as opposed to just sugar alone.
Okay. I want to stop you just for a minute because I want to ask you before I turn it over to the fellas, are healthy foods secretly loaded with sugar?
Healthy foods loaded with sugar. I don't think healthy foods are loaded with sugar. I think foods that are called healthy may have hidden sugars in them. I think that all foods are, in the food industry directs your its products towards your taste buds. It's like a bullseye. So it's like, even if you say something is healthy, I'll say to somebody, so you get a muffin, somebody say it's a healthy muffin, or it's a healthy bagel, or it's healthy. The bottom line still boils down to that there are always hidden sugar. We talk about dextrose, so we talk about maltose, we talk about a high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is put in almost every pastry, every bread out there, but most people don't know that that is that is a sugar. Those are sugars, and they are drivers of metabolic disease. So I say no in that if you go to grocery shopping every week and you buy bread because you know this is a staple in your family, you're not knowing that you're eating something that's damaging to your family. So that's a tough question, Gary. That's a tough question. I don't know if they're literally hidden, but it's because of the fact that you wouldn't buy it if it didn't taste good.
Okay.
You wouldn't buy
All
it.
right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It
Fair
wouldn't be a
enough.
product. I mean, I tell people all the time, don't tell me that I'm going to make a healthy muffin and then, but I'm going to take this out and take that out. You won't. No one will buy it.
Okay. That's a good point. That's a good point. Carlos, what say you, and then we'll see what Stan's got.
I want to write off that, everyone, Dr. Clark, thanks for joining the show. But, again, that healthy food topic, people think, certain foods are healthier than others. For example, I know people who eat cereal, okay? So you can start with a cereal that I know is notorious for having sugar in it, but a lot of people like it, Captain Crunch, okay? Then you could say, hey, I have heart healthy honey nut Cheerios.
Mhm.
Are they really that healthy for you? Because there's still a lot of sugar in those too. And then you have, I think, maybe the heart healthy or healthy Raisin Bran. It's great, 2 scoops of raisin. So let me ask you, those are 3 of the most popular brands of cereal out there. A lot of kids eat it, a lot of adults eat it. Well, with the exception of Captain Crunch, which I already know the answer to, are any of those actually considered healthy, even if the label says heart healthy or good for you?
What did I say about starch? That negates everything about the sweetness of it or the added sugar, because oats come from, the oats are starchy, and um, wheat is starchy. You know what? We're in that. So it doesn't matter whether sugar is added to it or not, because it's still a starchy substance. So that negates, even when they first start making cereals, it used to be breakfast was not a packaged cereal made by Post or Kellogg. So when they decided to get into the industry and start making these things, you call it a breakfast food, which it was not a breakfast food. Breakfast food used to be eggs and fish. But when they start putting in the toast and the bagels and the pancakes and the waffles and the cereal, all those things I just named are starches. So let's not keep talking about just sugar alone, because the starches become sugar.
Wow.
So none of them, technically speaking, are healthy at all. None of them. Taste good, fill you up. But I tell people all the time, in breakfast, when you wake up and you break that fast, your first food should not be a carbohydrate. It should not be starch. It should be protein.
Okay, so a hard-boiled egg, we okay with that one?
Absolutely. No starch in it.
All
No
right,
sugar in
good.
it.
How
Lots of
about,
protein.
how about the fruits that are sweet, like the cantaloupes
Huh?
and the honeydew melons? Are those naturally with sugar, or because they're fruits, they're still okay? Because I think a lot of people tend to get that coffee and fruit when they think healthy if they don't eat the starches. How's the fruit come in?
Okay, so let me say this about fruit and what I just said. In the morning, when you wake up and you break your fast, it should not be carbohydrates. It should be protein. And I should say this. The reason why you wake up and you become alert in the morning, because if you consume no carbohydrates whatsoever, no sugar whatsoever, your body produces, your liver produces glucose. It produces the glucose that it needs to wake you up. Because if you didn't get that energy boost from your liver producing glucose, you wouldn't wake up. That's why your alertness comes about, because of the sugar coming from liver production is called de novo gluconeogenesis, what it's called. Gluco means sugar, neo means new, and genesis means formation. So you don't need to eat sugar first thing in the morning. But now, to your question, fruits are bound, they have sugars that are bound in fiber. The good thing about any food that has sugar in it that is bound to fiber is that the fiber, when it gets into the bottom, into the body, is going to slow the absorption of glucose from the fruit into the bloodstream. So the difference between eating something that has sugar or starch in it and will cause your blood sugar to go from a normal level to a rapid rise is that the fiber in the fruit will stop it from having a rapid rise. It will just give you a delicate rise, and then your blood sugar will go back to normal. And we're going to get into the topic of why blood sugar even matters.
Okay, so this for someone who's trying to do the right thing. You said
Mm-hmm.
the hard-boiled eggs, we got a stamp of approval on that.
Yeah.
And fruit obviously is better than those starches.
Yes.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Starches are literally dangerous.
Mm.
Literally dangerous.
Stay away from IHOP.
Now,
Okay.
yeah, well,
So-
choose wisely. I get an omelet. But
Okay.
the thing I'm going to say about um, like she say, you take a pastry. Pastry is a combination not only of the starch but of the added sugar. So you're getting a double whammy anytime you eat a sweet tasting pastry, be it a muffin, be it a donut, I don't care. You're getting a double whammy because the starch is going to break down the sugar, and the sugar they put on it, if it's a glaze or something, or a topping on it, it's all sugar. It's all just going to raise the blood sugar. And then we're going to get back, like I said, we'll get into a subject of why that even matters.
Okay. Stan.
Dr. Clark, you bring up an excellent point, my friend, especially when you talk about, sugars. Can you guys hear me okay?
Sure.
Okay, especially when you talk about sugars in the foods. Let's talk a little bit about sugars in the drinks, because we're getting it from more than just one source. And I can tell you a story about some people that were near and dear to me who decided that a particular soft drink. They decided to go instead of the normal original formula of the soft drink, they decided to go to the diet um, version of that particular soft drink. And in that diet version of the soft drink, they tried to avoid the diabetes because they were pre-diabetic at the time, uh, but because they drank so much of that diet soft drink, not only did they develop the diabetes, but they also encountered high blood pressure. As a result, and Dr. Clark, you mentioned it, it has to taste good in order for it to be sold. So therefore, we substituted sugar for salt in that particular diet beverage. So therefore, we're getting it a bunch of different ways. And if you can touch on that, especially when it comes down to the number of things that we consume, not just from a food perspective, but also from a liquid perspective.
Okay. First and foremost, we have to go back to a time when there was not processed food, there were not grocery stores full of sodas. First of all, there was never an intention for the human body to have access through sugars, refined sugar, or to have refined starch. So the minute that you put that into a liquid form, a beverage form, especially if it's a soda, you're giving somebody a glass full of sugar. That's all you're doing, and you add a color to it, and you add a carbonation to it, but it's nothing but a sugar water. Um, the thing that and you talk about sweet drinks because now we have to make the comparison between, say, sodas and juices. Juices are no different. There was never intent for you to extract the juice from the plant, strip it of its fiber, and then pour it into your body. In other words, all metabolic problems, all diabetes, pre-diabetes, all heart disease, all cardiac disorders, all liver disorders, fatty liver, be it pancreatic disease, all these come from the fact that there was never intention for the body to have to take on more sugar than it could manage. And that's what we've done in the modern food industry is put in more sugar than the body could ever manage. So we're going to get to a topic that I was telling Gary about last week, what I call the glucose threshold. And then when we get into that, then you're going to realize that we have always done this from the time we're little children to the time we're grown. So we wonder why, we get weight gain and we end up with hypertension. There is a thing years ago, they used to say that person comes along and say, you have high blood pressure. Where does it come from? Oh, we don't know. We call it essential hypertension. We don't know why people get high blood pressure. But the primary reason in my analysis is that why you get high blood pressure is that when you get above a certain glucose level, the glucose begins to attack the body, attacks the arteries, causes inflammation in the arteries, in the joints, in the brain, and different parts of the body. As long as you keep this, that's why we talk about a normalized blood sugar. As long as you keep that blood sugar in a normalized range, you don't get these immune system attacks on the body, on the arteries, on the joints, and all the other parts of the body. Um, so the thing is, and you brought up about diet sodas also. Diet sodas are tricky, and in that they fool the body into thinking that it's sugar, so it responds in the same way. So it still gets an insulin release. But what makes matters worse is that while you're consuming that diet soda, you may not be getting sugar from the soda, but you also can usually consuming it with some type of starch anyway, so it doesn't matter. You defeated the purpose. So you didn't get sugar from a soda plus this pastry or McDonald's hamburger. And I use a hamburger reference because nobody thinks of sugar being on a hamburger, but that bun is sugar also. So you reduce the amount of sugar from the soda, but you still got the sugar from the bun. So you still get metabolic disease, and it still goes back to how much glucose does it impart to the body at a given time. Can the body handle it?
Dr. Clark, I'm going to go a little deeper here because I know that, we have a lot of people listening that are going to be keen on what is that number? What is that metabolic or that glucose threshold? I know that, hey, when you're not afraid to go to the doctor, we know that that number is less than 200 milligrams, in the body. And I know that, Carlos brought up, what types of food should we be eating? Because if we're going to give this information, let's make sure that we give it. So I know that my doctor in particular recommends a lot of whole nuts to, warrant, still it's a snacky food, but it's not a starch. And it does have a bit of protein, but there are some nuts out there that are not as healthy as others. We know that. But let's touch on, that particular threshold, and let's touch on some foods that we should be consuming because you mentioned protein. Uh, some of us have encountered Dr. Sebi, and his big question is what is protein? So let's touch on that a little bit.
Okay, so, and I don't like to deal with anybody's perspective unless I feel that it is able to be backed up by science. If it's not backed up by science, then this is your position. I'm not going to argue with your position because our mind comes from years and years of study on physiology, how the body functions. Threshold is controlled by a few things, more so probably genetics than anything else. So your glucose threshold is going to be a combination of your mother and your father. So your mother may have a glucose threshold, your father may have a totally different one. But whoever genes are you're more dominant in your family, in your body, that's what you're going to be looking at. You have no way of knowing this, but let's talk about. So that means that each and every individual pretty much has a different glucose threshold, but we do know that there are some generalized numbers. So we do know that in general, when most people wake up from a fasted state in the morning, that a number that's been determined of 80 to 100, considered what we call a fasting, normalized fasting blood glucose. Below 80, hypoglycemic or low blood sugar. So you have to have a certain glucose number to have what we call a basic metabolic rate. The body has to be at 80 or above in order for you to sleep and not, pass out. In order for all the systems to be working in your body, all the enzymatic activity and all the breakdown and all the repair of the body, your blood sugar has to be normalized. And that's what the liver is responsible for creating that sugar that keeps the bloodstream, that blood sugar level at a normal rate. Now, it doesn't change typically until you wake up in the morning. You might get a rise in the blood sugar when you wake up, but then it goes back to normal until you have that first meal. And if that first meal is primarily protein, you don't get a significant rise in blood sugar either. But the minute that you put in any type of starch or any type of sugar, then you start to see that rise. And that's why what I do is I say, okay, how do we know what each person's um, glucose threshold may or may not be? And one of the tools that now is available is what we call a continuous glucose monitor. So in the field of diabetes, which came out with them originally, you hear about a Dexcom. You put the little device on the back of the arm that gives you a reading on your phone. So now people are able to literally track what their blood sugars are doing. If every person had access to a continuous glucose monitor, a lot of metabolic diseases, a lot of diabetes and prediabetes and hypertension, all this stuff would not exist. In terms of, well, can we reverse diabetes? Well, diabetes is like, okay, the train went down the track and it's too far down the track. Sometimes you can't bring it all the way back to normal. So sometimes a diabetic can be more healthier, so they don't get diabetic complications, but it may not be able to bring them back to a non-diabetic state completely. The damage is done, the damage is done. If you have eye damage, you're not going to go back to not having eye damage. You might have no more further eye damage, but the damage is done. So The glucose threshold, once a person gets to, say, you eat a meal and you're a non-diabetic person, you're just a quote unquote normal person, the blood sugar should rise to 140, 150, and then come back down when you eat a meal. When it gets to 180, then we're getting in the danger zone. When it gets to above 180 and above, then that person pretty much is considered a diabetic. Now, if that person starts engaging what they call a low carbohydrate diet, then you will begin to see that blood sugar spikes that they have and the blood sugar readings going above 180 are eliminated. I've had patients take pictures of their food, send the pictures to me. I will examine their plate and tell them this is going to cause the blood sugar. This is going to cause it. Then next time we see them, we see the plate. Does it look different? Because I kind of got them what they can eat. Now, glycemic index is what I use. So if you have a continuous glucose monitor, and you have a glycemic index. What is a glycemic index? It is a table that basically categorizes food by what amount of food does what amount of glucose does it impart for this particular type of food. So if it says a lemon, it might say the number is 5. But if it says a pineapple, it might say the number is 78. This is a high glycemic food. It's the pineapple, but the lemon is very low. The cucumber is 8. The piece of bread is 83. The macaroni and cheese is 90. The broccoli is 15. So now you begin to see these numbers say, if I'm on this column over here, more than likely, I'm not going to see blood sugar spikes. I'm just going to be normalized. Did that answer your question? So now you need is a glycemic index. And if you have not, the other tool, which I'm trying to get everybody to be on, is a continuous glucose monitor. So everybody can track their blood sugar. Everybody needs to know what their blood sugar is, because the blood sugar is probably the number one determining thing of whether or not you remain healthy or not. I don't catch a cold.
Wow. Well, you know what, Dr.
You
Clark?
don't get skin breakout. A lot of things don't happen anymore because the body's not attacking it. The immune system is not attacking the body and then having all these little inflammatory responses that you see.
Dr. Clark, you're breaking it down, and this is what I love. Before you get to I forgot what you described earlier, but I'll just say the big topic that you've been talking about. I just want to ask you a kind of a two-part question. What are some of the warning signs that people often ignore? And then the second question is, how does sugar contribute to inflammation and disease?
Right. So I'll go back to the term I discussed, the threshold. So the body runs on glucose. If you don't have glucose, you're going to die. If you had no food and you were starving, the body would break down. The body would break down the muscles into glucose to keep you alive. Even though you're starving, the only thing keeping you alive is that the body is destroying your muscle to turn it into glucose. It's destroying that protein. It's converting protein to sugar. That's what keeps you alive. So, rephrase the question, sir.
Well, the first part was, what are the warning signs that people often ignore? And then the second part was, how does sugar contribute to inflammation?
So, once you get past the threshold, all other glucose in your body has to go somewhere. If you work out, you burn it off. If you don't work out, it builds up in the liver, in the arteries, in the pancreas, in the bloodstream. And then it gets to the fat stores. So I said before, I was talking to someone before, I said, understand something. The first place where you see the liver, you see the fat begins to build up in the liver. When it gets to the bloodstream, and basically you get fat in the bloodstream, they use a term when they do your blood test called triglycerides. The word GLY, glycerin, refers to glucose. So what the liver does is it takes that sugar and it ties 3 of them together. So now it becomes 1, 2, 3, triglyceride. A triglyceride is glucose that's been converted to fat. 3 molecules of glucose returns to fat. It gets in bloodstream, all of a sudden they say, okay, now you have high triglycerides, you have high cholesterol. Your blood fats are off the rails, and that's going to clog up your arteries. That in and of itself contributes to inflammation of the arteries too. Now, inflammation is something that is a good thing because you need it in terms of injury, helps in healing. But when it's excess inflammation, then it causes all kinds of health issues. So when you eat too much sugar, and the arteries themselves become inflamed. And I will to break that down a little further. When you get inflammation within the arteries, the inner lining of the artery has what we call endothelial cells. Those endothelial cells are responsible for producing a gas called nitric oxide. So we probably all heard of nitric oxide now, but most of us don't understand. It's like a signaling molecule. It's a gas that's produced in those endothelial cells. Or what happens is when the body starts to build up all this fat in the arteries, and the arteries start to become inflamed, that endothelial lining is destroyed, and now you cannot produce nitric oxide. Well, nitric oxide is what we call a vasodilator. And you don't get dilation of arteries. When you don't get a dilation of arteries, you get poor blood flow. And you get poor blood flow to every organ, especially those that are critical. They have small vessels like the heart, the eyes, the kidneys, the feet and legs, and the penis. As I told Gary one time, a long time ago, I said, having poor blood flow to the penis, erectile dysfunction, is like a canary in a coal mine. It's one of the first indicators of cardiac disease or heart disease, because you're getting poor blood flow down there as a man, you're getting poor blood flow to your heart. So that inflammation, that inflammatory process, not only is the arteries, but it also extends to one of the first things people begin to notice, that they're going to have joint pain. So you notice people when they get to be 40s, 50s, they start to feel joint pain. But they've been doing this process of overconsumption of glucose and bypassing that glucose threshold for so long that the body's been under attack in an inflammatory state probably since they're in their 20s. And then we won't even go as far as, what does it do, with the heart, what does it do to the brain. We know that, people who are diabetic get blind because a lot of times the inflammation in the arteries of the eyes, it doesn't just happen to people with diabetic. It happens to, these things that we talk about happening to diabetics, literally on a lesser scale happens to everybody who's consuming too much sugar and salt. So even those who have not had a diabetic diagnosis, they may have what we call, they may notice that when they walk, they get pain in their legs. They call it claudication. They get what we call peripheral vascular disease. So they get a lot of times symptoms of inflammation of the arteries in the lower extremities. They get poor blood flow to the lower extremities. Now all of a sudden you look up and you're feeling tingling in your feet and legs. You feel cold feet because you're not getting circulation. And circulation because of that constriction, because of the inability to produce nitric oxide and get a natural vasodilatation. And it all starts with the consumption of sugar.
Wow. Woof. As James Brown would say, take us to the bridge. You've been talking about taking us to the bridge. So, Bobby, take us to the bridge, Dr. Clark.
So at the end of the day, what do we want to do? I like to give people a working book, a checklist of things that, if you're going to begin to understand how you should eat, how you're going to be healthy, the first thing you have to understand is, what is food? Food is a fuel. When you're fueling the body, or you're fueling the body properly, of the three macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, only two form the structure of the body: your skin, your eyes, your organs, everything. Protein and fats what makes all up, but not carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is only an energy source. But when you start looking at your foods and you look at your macronutrient profile, you're trying to see, okay, am I getting the proper amount of proteins? Carbohydrates are not something that is what we call a vital, necessary nutrient. Yes, you do need glucose, but you can get it from almost anything. You can get it from your low glycemic foods. You can get it from all your broccoli and cucumbers and everything you put in the salad, all the fruits and vegetables that you eat. You can get that glucose from there. You don't have to eat pasta. You don't have to eat potatoes. You don't. And when I talk about vegetables, I don't include starchy vegetables. They're fillers. Some of them may have vitamins and minerals, but you can only consume them in small quantities. The problem is that when we eat, starches, we're going to eat a big bowl of rice, macaroni and cheese, we're going to eat a big bowl of pasta, a big thing of pasta. And to me, pasta is not a food at all. It is a ground flour that's been formed into something that we call food. You can't go and find pasta growing anywhere. So meats are They are a source of protein. One of my favorite things to talk about meat is this. People say, well, should I be a vegan or should I be a carnivore or should I be an omnivore? Should I eat meat? Okay, I always say to them, I said, think about it. Say, what does a cow eat? A cow eats grass. Why does he become so big and strong and muscular? Because everything of a nutrient source is in the grass. But for some reason or another, God didn't make you to eat grass, but he made you to eat things that bring those nutrients to you in those plants. And believe it or not, you can't get vitamin B12 from most plant sources, but you can from a cow. Now, if your cow is eating grass and hay, generally, if it's not adulterated, that is going to be a very healthy piece of meat to eat. But if, what we do in this society, we have what we call grain fed. Cows were not meant to eat soy and corn. So they don't get the nutrients that they're supposed to get because it doesn't exist in soy and corn. It only is in the grass. If you could eat grass, you'd be strong as a cow. But, oh, and gorillas, what, they eat fruit? They don't eat any meat either. So muscle is not necessarily about eating meat, but in terms of human beings. For whatever reason, this animal that the Bible even says, this animal that has the cut, you know, this is the one you can eat. Because your B12 literally comes from that cow. As far as fats are concerned, most people don't know that extra virgin olive oil, I drink it every day because it has what we call polyphenols in it. Now, bringing up polyphenols. Polyphenols are chemical substances that have a healing effect in the human body. So you're going to find them in plants. So the pigment of those plants is what usually indicated polyphenols. So you got coffee and chocolate is dark, and you got purple in vegetables and fruits, and you got orange carotenoids and watermelon and cantaloupe and carrots and stuff like that, papaya. So all these different colors are what we call flavonoids of polyphenols, and they're also what we call antioxidants. So these are the things which vitamins are made from. So the reason that I even tell people that they should supplement, if you have a diet that's like you eating green leafy vegetables, you're getting lots of magnesium because that's a mineral you really need. You're getting a lot of iron, you're getting a lot of your potassium and whatnot from those plants. Many people eat beets because of course the beets also cause vasodilatation. They cause dilatation of the arteries. They help to replace nitric oxide to the arteries that the body doesn't normally produce anymore because it has a substance in it called, what is it called? Arginine? Yeah, L-arginine.
L-arginine. I eat beets every day. I
Yeah.
eat beets every day.
So, and I like Gary because Gary, he eats some beets and he rides a bicycle. He gets that vasodilatation, and that's why he's staying so young and youthful and strong at 97 years old. But so I tell people all the time. So you got your green leafy vegetables. You got you have the meats if you want to eat. You can eat eggs. You can eat fish. You can eat, you can eat beef if you want to. But lean, healthy beef that's grass fed. And butter. Butter is literally better. Butter is very healthy for you because it actually feeds your gut bacteria. Okay. So the other thing that I would say is if we use to say, well, how do we know what's a good way to go with our fruits and vegetables or any foods? Get a glycemic index, number one. Number two, I would definitely, because I actually give patients a continuous glucose monitor so they'll know what their body's doing. Stop drinking lots of fruits, juices. Coffee, if you're going to have coffee, don't be making a coffee desserts. One thing I don't like about, the chain coffee places that, they have all these very nice, sweet tasting drinks, but they raise your blood sugar tremendously in the morning along with the pastry that they sell you. But the thing is that if we are to begin to understand, and unfortunately, we're all gentlemen who our best years are already behind us, but our years going forward can be fabulous. Because I always tell the older people, I say, look, let me tell you something. Don't walk around here with a foot in the grave. Get your foot out of the grave and start living right, start eating right, and start doing something different. Get up every day with a mindset that you're gonna get some work in. You're gonna work on your mind, you're gonna work on your body, you're gonna work on your diet, you're gonna work on nutrition, you're gonna work on breathing, you're gonna work on a lot of different things that are going to help you with longevity.
Man, tremendous, tremendous. In the time that we have, I'm going to throw it over to the fellas for any closing comments or questions. We got a few minutes left. Stan the man, what you got?
Dr. Clark and the fellows, I want to make sure that all of our listeners understand that even though we may be suffering from some of this stuff, some diabetes, some, stress-related illnesses, I just want to remind you that it is not the end. There is still hope. There is still a chance that you can start eating a little bit better. I'm a big proponent of relaxing and reducing a little bit of that stress. And Dr. Clark mentioned it very well that we put a lot of stress on our bodies by what we consume, at the dinner table. However, we also consume a lot of things mentally that we should not be consuming. We also allow some things from our environment, that we should not be doing. So I just want to encourage our listeners that though you may be suffering from some of this stuff or dealing with some of these health related issues, the end is not here. Dr. Clark mentioned it. You can pull that foot out of that grave and you can live a healthier life by just making some small changes in your diet, in your mindset, in your exercise routine. Sometimes you just got to get out and go to the park, do some walking, do some sort of stress release or some exercise, have some fun, enjoy your family, laugh a little bit. Sometimes just go to a comedy show or watch some comedy on TV, something to break the monotony of some of the stresses that we deal with each and every day. So, Dr. Clark, I want to thank you for all the advice that you provided to this audience and to us. Believe it or not, I learned quite a bit tonight, and I appreciate you bringing this information home for us to live a healthier life.
Carlos.
All right, Dr. Clark, thank you again. Learned a lot tonight. Thank you, for the endorsements. On at least we know that there are some foods that we can eat. We have to just think about what we eat before we eat it. I don't know anybody in the world at this point who wouldn't be okay eating some fruit in the morning. Fruit does not taste bad. I mean, there's several varieties. A hard-boiled egg, if you're hungry. I know a hard-boiled egg is not a Snickers bar, but maybe if you occasionally eat one of those instead of a candy bar, that will help take you, a long ways as far as heading in the right direction. And yes, you got to mix in a healthy diet with exercise. You know what? On behalf of my friend and our friend, the researcher, I know he has spoken to me several times, and I meant to ask this question on Mr. Spivey's behalf. The zero, we talked about diet drinks. Is there any difference between diet and Coke Zero, Sprite Zero? Because, a lot of the people who are going to watch this program are going to look at their diet. They're going to start looking at, okay, I can't do diet now because it's still a starch. But is there a difference between maybe Coke Zero, or should they just simply drink more water? That's the question I think Mr. Spivey would have asked. And on behalf of him, could you just answer that last one for me tonight?
Coke Zero or Diet Coke, whatever, or Diet. I don't want to use the word Coke because I'm not against any industry. But those type of drinks to me are uh, deceitful to people. In that, so you're still getting color, food coloring, carbonation. Yeah, water is basically what was intended for you to drink. Tea and coffee, those are okay. When you start talking about manufactured drinks, then you're getting into a zone where you're adding toxins to the body unnecessarily. So now we want to think about, if we want to truly be healthy, then we have to, say, well, I have to be cognizant of what I put in my body at all times. You were mentioning about breakfast. I just thought I'd say something about that too, because you said a fruit in the morning. To me, two things that are very good in the morning go with breakfast. The boiled egg you keep talking about, I would say, is avocado and kiwi. Very good. Not high in sugar, very nutritious and whatnot. But I don't know in America. In say the Caribbean, a lot of people eat avocado. In America, probably less so. But I do remember back in the day in America, African Americans, especially from the South, their breakfast was going to be eggs and fish. And we've gotten away from that because one thing about the fish is that, you're going to get a lot of, healthy fats in the fish and you're going to get protein also. And I think that maybe we might consider, how do we go back to that? Uh, and the other thing is, I think a lot of people, I don't know how many people really like sardines. I love sardines.
Yes.
But I think along with eggs, sardines make a great breakfast. Some people actually have never taken a can of sardines and put it in a skillet and heat it up, season it a little bit. That's actually very good, but you don't hear people don't talk about things like that. So, but I like I said, again, Carlos, I steer away from any carbohydrates first thing in the morning because I know it's going to raise your blood sugar. If you're going to eat fruit, you might want to eat it after 11, 12, 1 o'clock, within that time window. I tell people all the time, your window of eating should probably stop about 6 or 7 in the evening. Your body should rest from 7 in the evening. The fastest state should be 12 hours, minimum 12 hours.
Wow.
And that's what helps your metabolism and your circadian rhythms, and you be in sync with the earth and with when your body begins to be in sync, then your hormonal rhythms, the way your body releases hormones to make your body be regulated properly. These are things that are done when you sleep the correct number of times. You let your body process foods throughout the night like it's supposed to, without eating a lot of snacks. And people want to go to bed at night and eat ice cream before they go to bed and don't understand why they get up in the middle of the night and urinate. They don't associate with their body saying, okay, I'm still processing food that we should have stopped this process 3 hours ago. So now at 3 a.m., I get up and I go to the bathroom. We don't know that if we stop eating at 7 and we're in circadian rhythm, our bodies, you don't release the hormone that causes you to urinate if you stop eating at a certain hour.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know what? I'm going to pat myself on the back. I did a 15-mile bike ride today. A lot of times my family looks at my breakfast and they go like, oh. Breakfast for me was a hard-boiled egg, organic beets, organic cucumbers, avocado, and I chased it down. Now, this is probably where I went sideways, but I chased it down with Bloody Mary mixed with beetroot powder, mixed in with beetroot powder. And then I had water on the bike ride, So maybe I mixed it up maybe I messed it up with the Bloody Mary mix with the beetroot powder. But hey, I did the 15 miles, So, man, Dr. Clark, I can't. People's head are exploding watching this show, thanks to you. What's on your cap? You look like you got something on your hat there.
No, it
Okay.
probably looks backwards to you, but it says mitochondria.
And what is mitochondria?
Well, let me say this first of all. When I made the cap and I put it on my social media, I said, those who know. Now, mitochondria is what they call the powerhouse of the cell. It's what produces the energy that allows Gary to get up and get on his bicycle and ride 12, 15 miles. All cells have mitochondria except for red blood cells. You have millions of mitochondria throughout the body that produces something called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy currents of the body. When your body burns ATP, it goes from adenosine triphosphate to diphosphate to monophosphate. When it gets to monophosphate, you're tired. You're winded. But as long as those mitochondria are producing ATP, your energy level is lifted. That's why you get up in the morning, your body's processed food all night long. The mitochondria within the cells is taking all the glucose, it's converted it to energy. So you wake up in the morning, you feel energetic. By the time you get it at nighttime, the mitochondria, they've been whipped because they don't produce as much energy. You're tired, now you got to go start the process all over again. That's what the rhythm of the sun and the circadian rhythm being in sync with the body. I mean with the earth and whatnot. We're in sync with the earth. It's no different than why the rooster wakes up in the morning and crows at 6:30 because he has the same cycle. You have the same cycle. We just get out of cycle because we live in a modern society that says you got to work a midnight shift or you got to be to work at 4 o'clock in the morning. We throw our bodies off. But that kills a lot of us. And we talk about stress. It causes internal stress. It's causes cortisol release. It causes you to have weight gain because all these things that you're doing is that you're causing hormonal imbalances that cause the body not to be able to regulate itself properly. And that's what throws the metabolism off. See, people say, my metabolism is high, my metabolism is slow. Your metabolism is being governed by hormones that you're not governing because you're not living your body. You're letting your body live in the way it's supposed to by following the rhythm of the earth. The sun wakes in the morning, you wake up. Gets dark at night, you stop eating, you go to bed. That's what you're supposed to do.
Wow. All right. This my head's about to
Mitochondria,
explode.
mitochondria,
I got
those who
you.
know. Now, if you see, I tell people, join my mitochondria team because, and the reason I say those who know because each of us who study in the science field, be it doctors, nurses, pharmacists, dentists, anybody in the science field, and any little biologists, people in the laboratories doing lab work, med techs, everybody has to study mitochondria. For those who know.
All right. Well, look here. Let me just close out by saying thank you for being on the show. I
So,
think people's head are going to explode in a good way with all the information and knowledge. You have this unique way of being able to break it down and make it hearable and understandable. Our health is our wealth. Listen, folks, our families need us. Our communities need us, and our legacy depends on how seriously we remain and take our health. Prevention is power, information is power, accountability is power. I'm Gary Johnson for the Thought Brothers, and until next week, we are out of here. Thank you very
Good night.
much.
good night.
So, what happens after the show with the Thought Brothers? Come on, Dr. Clark. Anything else you want to talk about?
The discussion in the show was primarily geared at having people to understand the role of sugar and how it causes disease. And how they can do better, how they can, prevent disease. But one of the things I didn't bring up was that the bigger picture is how do we prevent people? How do we deal with the preventive phase where people can do something to prevent themselves from getting to a health status that requires medications and hospitalization and illness and morbidity and death? And the problem is that we are always focused on a population group that's already dealing with problems, but we negate dealing with a population that can avoid these problems. And that's the population group between the people in 20s to 40s. Because there are a lot of things that people, once you get to your 20s, you're an adult now, you can do whatever you want to do. But one of the things we normally do is that once we're leaving home and we start to venture out. We go to restaurants, we go to clubs, we do all these things, for entertainment that are deleterious and dangerous to our health. And we suffer from it after age 40.
Wow.
That's to say, we normally don't touch those sacred things like drinking, smoking marijuana, smoking cigarettes, smoking hookah, staying up late at night, uh, not getting sleep, inducing stress on our body, starting the metabolic decay that happens in the body. Metabolic decay, when you see somebody who's a diabetic at 40, they were probably pre-diabetic at 30. And they've gone through 10 years of pre-diabetes. And all of a sudden now they go to the doctor and say, your blood sugar's out of control. But nobody said to them, the things that you're doing in terms of your diet, you're not getting exercise, you're eating wrong, you're eating fast food restaurants, you're eating late at night, you're drinking, you're doing all these unhealthy things that if you were to be able to get into the minds of people, say, you know what, and maybe at least by 30, you need to begin to become more health conscious. And I think part of, even the thing of men who want to spend all night long drinking, smoking, and playing video games. That's one of the things that they find themselves a lot of times engaged in harmful activity, just sitting still playing a video game because they're sitting there drinking, they're eating fast food. Everybody's ordering from DoorDash or something like that. So they're getting food just brought to them. So there's lack of activity that say, when I was in my 30s, I was still going to the court, to outside court and the indoor basketball court, playing basketball, getting it in. And I mean, I did this almost till I was 40 years old. This is not what you're saying. So you're saying men, particularly men, who are getting less healthy earlier. So this is what we should be targeting. Some of the discussion we have about metabolism, about nutrition, about harmful substances, about stress reduction. This is what we talk about when we use the term lifestyle medicine. Why should you use lifestyle medicine to direct someone who's 50 years old when really the lifestyle problems usually are worse between 20 and 40? That's the group that needs to be targeted.
Wow. Okay. All right, fellas. Anything else before we close out after the show? I know the Knicks and the Spurs are on, or getting ready to come on if they're not already. So,
Go
anybody
Knicks.
else?
That's it. Thank you, Dr. Clark, and go Knicks.
All right. Great show.